1944, and the war was over in 45 of May.
Yeah.
But every bit of it was on the front line.
So 7
7
months of that
we
was
lost
combat.
almost 1,000 men.
Out of how large a unit?
10,500, 11,000.
Huh. Yeah.
10% dead.
Yeah.
But it's a very short engagement time.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage of losses were very high, and wounded were very high too. It was on the, because, you know, many outfits were there for 2-3 years, the entire wartime, and just by circumstances of our training and whatnot, we were in training longer, and we weren't, which is the reason after the war in Europe ended, we were heading for the invasion of Japan, when in mid-ocean, leaving Europe to come to the States for a furlough before transferring to Japan, the announcement of the bomb, the atomic bomb, and the war was over. But rightfully, they were going to send us on because our service record had been very, very good, but very short.
Yeah. So you hadn't earned enough points to be discharged.
Well, the whole outfit was going.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to be discharged.
Yeah.
While Japan was still there, there was none of this discharge business.
Yeah.
The war was not over. It was very much on. Once the Japanese surrendered, then points kicked in, and I got out right away.
Yeah.
I had plenty of points. With a couple of Bronze Stars and a couple of Purple Hearts, it makes up for whatever your time out there was.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me how you were wounded.
By both times by fragments of 88 shells. The first time was very, very minor, just pieces of shrapnel there, one here, a couple in my chest, but very small pieces, and not significant at all. But you bleed, you get a Purple Heart. I think I was 2 days in the hospital or something. The second time was, I was just lucky. Well, you're lucky if you survive any time and going. But I led my platoon into this tunnel, which is one of the 4 or 5 tunnels along Lake Garda. And we knew we had been chasing the Germans after the Riva Ridge and Della Torratia. We then poured into, almost immediately within, I think it was within the 4 days, 3 days, so they couldn't recoup. And we poured into the Po Valley, and we had something like 4 divisions or 5 divisions of German soldiers to our rear. We just kept moving and moved very fast, and right up to the Alpine borders, and then up Lake Garda, and the Germans were retreating in that section, and they had set long before, in the previous 2 or 3 years, after the Gothic line, they had set the next line, which was in the Alps. So into the mountains were carved their gun emplacements for their 88s,
And everything was sighted in.
Everything sighted. Very difficult. So we expected a tremendous problem going up. It didn't result in that kind of problem as much as we thought, except these tunnels in Lake Garda. And the incident that happened, we got into a tunnel, so all kinds of bodies around. It was presumed that the Germans had tried to explode the tunnel, and the explosion went off prematurely, and there must have been the remnants of 50 to 75 Germans in there. And we were resting. There had been a lot of shell fire from across Lake Garda coming in, as well as in front of us. And it had been a wild dash for 4 days. We're resting in the tunnel, just laying back against the tunnel, and the Germans happened to put an 88 shell right down the center of the tunnel entrance, and exploded within the tunnel and caused massive damage, just huge. I was I had a best friend, Ray Hellman, no longer with us, who was a sergeant in the same outfit, and he was lying right next to me, and reached for his stomach, and screaming and whatnot. I'm hit on the stomach, and we rolled him over. I went to, and his St. Christopher's medal, which was huge, was bent in half. Piece of shrapnel came in, and he's lying on the wall. The medal's right here, and hit the thing, and the shrapnel's on his stomach. Yeah, he's yelling like hell. And while I'm doing this, somebody says, "What's with you?" And my whole knee is exposed, and I have all kinds of shrapnel and whatnot. But I tell you, in the moment, when you're hit, there's an adrenaline shot that's amazing. If it hasn't cut anything severely, you just don't feel any of the local pain or what.